Good Friday morning. This is Bill Loveridge with Community Church of Loyalton's Daily Devotion. Today's devotion is from Ray Stedman, a familiar name to most of you, I'm sure, and it's called Any Volunteers? Recommended reading is Nehemiah 11, and I'm going to read verses 1 and 2 of that chapter. Now the elders of the people settled in Jerusalem, and the rest of the people cast lots to bring one out of every 10 to live in Jerusalem, the holy city, while the remaining 9 were to stay in their own towns. The people commended all the men who volunteered to live in Jerusalem. The great principle to remember in reading the Old Testament is that what happens to Israel on a physical level pictures what's happening to us on the spiritual level. God, too, is a builder. The New Testament tells us he is building a city with inhabitants called the New Jerusalem. It's not like the old one, made of bricks and mortar, but a new city built of spiritual stones, living stones, according to the New Testament, 1 Peter 2:5. It is intended to be inhabited by redeemed people. If you draw that parallel, you will begin to see some of the teaching of this passage of Nehemiah. Chapter 11 is the account of Nehemiah's efforts to repopulate Jerusalem. Although the city wall had been rebuilt at this point, Nehemiah discovered that he had a problem. He had a fine, well-defended city, but without people. His solution was to draft families to move there, for capital must be inhabited since it is the heart of the nation. As the governor, he simply issued an edict. 1 out of every 10 people living in the suburbs must move to Jerusalem. He went through the towns and numbered the people, counting them off by tens. Then they drew a die with 10 numbers on it. The man who had the same number that came up on the die was expected to move his family to Jerusalem. If you read this carefully, it is apparent that when a man was chosen to move in Jerusalem, he was permitted to decline if he wanted to. That is because God wanted volunteers for this. So a man could be chosen, but could decide against moving. Then the lot would be cast again and another name chosen. Sooner or later, someone would be found who consented freely to go. According to the account, those who chose to go were commended by the people. They honored them because they volunteered to do what God called them to do. The same principle applies in the church today. According to the New Testament, we are all called into the ministry. All of us. The ministry belongs to the saints. The minute you become a Christian, you are moved into God's New Jerusalem. You are asked to take up labor there, to do work according to the spiritual gift God has given you. But you must also volunteer to do it. God does not force his people to do what they are asked to do. He gave us all spiritual gifts, but he does not force us to use them. Yet, if you want to be respected or honored and commended at last by the Lord himself and by all these people, then the wise thing is to volunteer to perform the realm of ministry that is opened up for you. Lord, I want to be part of what you are building. Thank you for the gifts and the talents you have given me. Show me how best to put them to use. In your Son's name I pray. Amen. God calls and equips his people to serve voluntarily. Will we miss the grandeur of his calling to minister both in the church and the world by default. Something to chew on. I'll be back tomorrow, Saturday, with another devotion. Have a grand day, a grand weekend. Be blessed.